Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well this lovely spring afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar. Apologies for the slight delay. We just had a bit of trouble getting some of our speakers into the platform, but they're joining now, so hopefully we're nearly there. This session is primarily aimed at those that have or will be dealing with Gateway 3 or the Building Safety Act across construction and asset ownership, where we'll be discussing the current situation with Gateway 3 today, some of the challenges in bringing data and submissions together, how these can be overcome, and we'll also be sharing some real-life contractor insights with Lovell and their experience in preparing for Gateway 3 in the Golden Thread. My name is Maria Hudson. I am CMO at Zutec, and I'll be your moderator and host for today. We're really privileged to be joined by Chris Wallace, Construction and Technical Director at Lovell Partnerships, who is responsible for delivery of all the live projects within the London region and specific focus on operational health and safety and technical aspects. So thank you, Chris, for joining today. Chris is joining to share his perspective and experience of Gateway 3 and Golden Thread and Lovell's thinking about it as a business. So yeah, thanks again, Chris, for being part of the session. We're also joined by our internal experts, our internal handover experts at Zutec, including James Starman, Head of Account Management, Josh Franks, who is one of our senior sales team members, and Caroline Aboda, Head of our handover customer operations. And we'll be discussing some of the typical pain points and approach to thinking about Gateway 3 and also share some live demos. So thank you, team, for being part of the session as well. Just a bit of housekeeping from my side. We will wrap up the session with questions, but we want to keep the webinar as interactive as possible. So if you do have some questions throughout the session, please ask by using the Q&A tool, both at the bottom of the right hand of the screen, and we can address things as we go. There'll also be polls throughout the session, so please do share your insight, as this helps us understand more about your needs and how we can support you better. Lastly, the session is being recorded, so we can distribute the recording after. So before we get into the crux of the session, I wanted to share a little bit more about Zutec. So for those of you that don't know Zutec, we have been providing O&M creation, digital handover, and construction and property tech solutions to our customers, primarily in the UK and Ireland, for over 25 years. Our business started with the support of delivery of O&Ms and building manuals. However, as our business has grown and we've acquired complementary companies over time, such as CreateMaster, which some of you may know, to enable best-in-class software and solutions across the REBA stages of the building lifecycle. As one of the kind of leaders in O&M delivery in the UK, we work with the trades to help with streamlining trade management. We have a structured data in our platform and comprehensive data. We help with building comprehensive digital data sets and provide dashboards with analytics and reporting. Today, we have over 500 customers. We have processed over 35 million documents and digitized over 13,000 buildings, working with some of the biggest and smallest contractors. And you can see some of those companies on this slide. So today, as the webinar title suggests, we are focusing on Gateway 3 and moving from policy into real-world practice, or from principle really to proof. Well, there have been a number of applications since the new regime came into force. Most of these have been around renovations and retrofits of higher risk residential buildings. However, with the Building Safety Act having been around for around 3 years now, we're starting to see new high-risk residential buildings fall under the new regime, reaching the point of handover and completion, and therefore the amount of applications will start to increase, with the BSR expecting an increase in that, and they stated that in their recent strategic report, which came out on the 31st of March, for those of you that have seen it. And with that, the industry attention has firmly shifted as well. So focusing from Gateway 2, where it's all about getting permission to start a building, to Gateway 3, where it's about getting permission to occupy that building. This is a fundamental cultural shift across the industry, because contractors and assets owners can no longer simply state that a building is compliant. They must now prove that it is safe before anyone can occupy it. And Gateway 3 really brings in that accountability and evidence, and so it can be tested. That means that submitting a Gateway 3 application to the Building Safety Regulator and obtaining a completion certificate before building can be registered or occupied. Ultimately, this is a point where projects will either succeed or stall. It's not just another regulatory step, it's a movement towards safety, where safety is verified, evidence and accountability is enforced, and confidence is given in the safety of that building due to the evidence that is supplied and submitted at point of application. So we're seeing the move away from the intention to build to what is agreed in Gateway 2, to what is being evidenced and showing how it is built. It directly impacts completion and commercial risk, and introduces that legal hard stop before occupation. Only when you can get the completion certificate can you register that building and then get it occupied. So to get everybody warmed up and ready, I'm going to move on to the first poll. You'll see the polls pop up again in the right-hand corner of the screen. If everyone can submit their insight, that would be really valuable for us. And that poll is: how prepared is your organisation for Gateway 3 submissions? Are you fully prepared and confident? Mostly prepared with minor gaps, you partially prepared, not prepared at all, or it does not apply to you yet? If you're able to submit your votes, and we can see where in the road people are. And first of all, I can see that most of you, are partially prepared. But there's significant work that needs to be done with Gateway 3. Some are saying it doesn't apply to you yet. Others are saying not prepared. But what's interesting here is none of you are saying fully prepared and confident at this stage. So hopefully, some of the information and insight we give you today will help with, with that preparation in terms of Gateway 3. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. And talk a little bit more about what kind of that final approval stage means and what is required in practice, essentially. The approval stage is at the core of it is the final approval stage before higher risk residential building can be occupied. Like I explained before, it's a mandatory process. It requires a submission of a comprehensive as-built information, and is supported by clear demonstrable evidence. The regulator will apply a high level of scrutiny at this stage and expects to see a complete golden thread of safety information from design through to completion. Crucially, the building must be shown to be constructed in full compliance with building regs and approved designs with clear accountability and a robust handover in place. So what does that actually mean in reality, and what are the requirements? At Gateway 3, the focus is on proving that the building has been delivered compliantly, not just designed that way, meaning that the approved design has been built and any changes have been controlled and comply with that building regs. So the completion certificate application must include full as-built plans, information and supporting documentation, which is the final physical reflection of the design intent that was reviewed and approved at Gateway 2 and demonstrates that the work is complete and complies with applicable building regs. A copy of the complete change control log must also be provided to the regulator. The change control process is set out in Part 3 of the 2023 High Risk Building Regulations and applies where any document relating to the work has to be changed. It is the responsibility of the client and the principal contractor and the designer to decide if the change is major and notifiable or just requires recording as part of that log. The principal contractor must maintain that control log to record all controlled changes and notify the safety regulator if the change is major or notifiable. If the change is major, there's an application to the regulator for building control approval, so that application can be granted. If it's notifiable, then the regulator must be notified before any work is carried out. Then from that point, any additional and all evidence must be captured throughout construction, commissioning and inspection as required and gathered as part of that submission. The Building Safety Regulator will also then have access to whether the building meets all requirements, confirming the work is complete, compliant, and that all required information has been accurately submitted and handed over. There is a statutory assessment period of 8 weeks, and ultimately approval depends on the demonstration of statements within that compliance, and that duty holders confirm that the building satisfies all functional requirements of the building regulations. Once completion certificate is provided, then the building can be registered and occupied. So in short, you have to show golden thread. So what was built, why did it change, who approved that change, and any information that is traceable, and how that change has been maintained, showing that evidence. If you don't have that, then your golden thread really isn't working. So in terms of where we are today, Gateway 3 is still very much an evolving process. From the latest reports that we've seen from the regulator, there has been about 200 applications to date, as we've said, most on the renovation side, but the BSR is expecting more. However, while there is an assessment period of 8 weeks, there are reports that there are approval delays, and we're seeing that, with the regulator, and hence some of the recent changes. With data indicating that applications are taking longer. Some of the reasons for those applications taking longer are due to incomplete fire and structural safety documentation, weak change control records, discrepancies between approved plans and as-built reality, and poor integration of safety systems. The BSR has acknowledged that there is a backlog of Gateway 3, and as part of their new strategic plan for 26-27, they are stating that they're working to increase internal expertise, but also be on site more for inspections, and provide clearer guidance to reduce delays, while also increasing inspections throughout the build so that it supports that final application. So far, what was previously managed towards the end of a project now needs to be enabled much earlier. What's becoming clear is that while Gateway 3 is exposing gaps in information management, coordination and readiness right to the point where there's no room for error, this is actually causing a bit of an information burden. So early engagement, both internally and with the regulator, is critical to achieving compliance with Gateway 3. So I'm just going to see if I think we're just missing one of our speakers at this point. I don't know, James, are you there?
Hi, Maria. Yeah, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
No,
I'm now going to hand over to James to continue talking about some of the challenges that we're seeing.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, apologies, everybody. The platform simply won't let me turn my camera on, which is a little unfortunate. But yeah, I wanted to kind of talk through some of the kind of overarching themes that we're seeing from our customers. So, as Maria said, we work with a wide range of contractors, asset owners and managers, and with the advent of the new regulation, and our proximity to them, we hear a large amount of feedback related to what does working with Gateway 3 and the BSR look like. And I think there's some pretty consistent themes that come through, both in terms of how our customers are needing to adapt the ways they work to align with the new regulatory environment, and some of the pressures that they feel as a result of how the regulator operates. So kind of a few call outs here. I think looking at internal processes, it can be the case that evidence is created late, records end up being incomplete, or sometimes kind of inaccessible when it comes to the point of submission, which obviously leads on to delays and the like. This is often down to things such as fragmented data. So information kind of being spread across different platforms or existing in different silos, which is obviously a challenge to be worked against. And then when submissions do get returned by the BSR, finding that information, going back into it and being able to locate the relevant evidence to support submissions further or to respond to the regulator's queries can often be a bit of an arduous process. And I think this kind of bottom middle one sums it up quite nicely. It is pretty new and expectations are often unclear. So there is no standardized way to submit at the moment, and I think we work with a number of customers on this, and whilst there's a lot of commonalities in how they work, there's kind of bits that are up for debate, and until this becomes a fully formed and well fleshed out process, that's often going to be the case. It is a heavy documentation burden, as the kind of bottom right box says, and I think there's a heavy resource implication as a result, and so it's key that customers and we're able to support our customers in reducing that administrative overhead. I can't appear to flip the slide forward if you wouldn't mind, Maria. Sorry. Thank you. So on to our next poll quickly. So for those of you that have submitted or are preparing to submit your Gateway 3 submissions, what are your biggest challenges? So this is multi-select, select all that apply. So getting all the as-built information or golden thread requirements together, design changes during construction, evidence completeness at handover, fragmented data or incomplete records, coordination across the supply chain, understanding regulator expectations, starting late and being exposed, not getting approval to occupy, or all of the above. So it should be open now for you.
Now, look, from what we're seeing, James, a lot of people are putting in all of the above, probably having similar challenges to what we've been hearing and seeing from the looks of it. Understanding regulatory expectations is always also coming up as a key challenge. I think their guidance has been limited, and I think they understand that now based on their new strategic report that came out, that they are going to provide more clarity around this. And getting the as-built information together is another issue. Design changes, obviously managing that, and coordination across the supply chain seem to be some of the biggest issues. But as I said, all of the above seems to be the main point, that everybody's having kind of similar challenges with this process. So I'll hand back to you, James.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's pretty telling that it is such a wide range of potential issues here, partly due to it being a relatively new process, and I think partly due to there being, as I say, not that kind of consistent, cohesive approach to these submissions, and part of that goes in hand in hand with the second most prominent of the responses, which is around actually just understanding the regulator expectations. So in working for our customers, what we're kind of working with them for is to develop what would term like a case for BSA change, or a change to their approach in working on it. So looking at what our customers' strategic objectives are, they're often pretty consistent. Obviously, there is this compliance and risk management element. So needing to validate building information in line with BSA requirements and ensure compliance effectively protects kind of future funding streams. It guards against financial penalties and, of course, reputational damage. And so in service of that, certain things need to be achieved, such as integration of systems. So that's streamlining of data management to achieve that golden thread of information, and then operational efficiency and excellence. So using tools and processes to enhance operations, ultimately cut costs and expedite project completion, so things aren't hung up on this Gateway 3 stage. I think a lot of the current challenges we've spoken to at a high level, but managing risk is a key one. Obviously, failure to comply with the BSA can expose customers to penalties and reputational damage, as previously said. Current challenges are really prominent, related to fragmented systems, so that information sitting in a variety of different tools and areas, and having to pull them together into a single source of truth is challenging. There's inconsistent standards across divisions as well, so different teams within the project maybe working to different standards, and the way that information is captured and relayed can be variable as a result of that. And then just resource allocation, right? It's a resource intensive activity. It diverts attention from core building activities, and so being able to carve out the space in order to achieve that is also a challenge. So where we step in and where we look to help solve is around these areas of data centralization, so consolidating that key building information into a single source of truth, and then underpinning that with real-time reporting. So a visual dashboard-led approach, which allows a range of stakeholders to monitor progress, ensure that compliance standards being moved towards, and that there is that ongoing stream of asset management information. Providing clarity on deliverables as well. So as I said, across a number of customers, we've tried and tested the kind of structure and underlying mechanism for data capture against BSA to help mitigate against that risk of non-compliance. I think as well at its core, our approach and our software platform is very flexible. So not only is it able to adapt to the current requirements, but it also is effectively future-proofed to any kind of changing regulatory landscape. Look, the expected business outcomes of this are kind of in line with the strategic objectives. So that piece about risk mitigation, so proactively identifying any potential compliance issues before they become a problem, standardizing output across divisions, so giving a clear set of expectations for everybody who's got a hand in collating this information, doing all this so that we help optimize resource use, so reducing that administrative burden. It's obviously never going to go away, but it is key that processes and tools are in place to support those who have direct exposure to this, and then real-time data management, so that central repository and single source of truth led approach. And this affects customers across kind of project director and group level. We can move on to the next slide, please. Thanks, Maria. One question we often get is why can't I just use my CDE, which is a fair question, and I think we all know that CDEs are great for project data, but they're not really designed to manage that single source of information for building safety compliance. A range of things aren't necessarily there around templates, forms, workflows, etc., which are built for safety compliance, and what you do need are visuals, dashboards that are built specifically to demonstrate compliance and where there's potential compliance gaps whilst working through a project. A clear mechanism to collect information in a standard manner, as I said, across the various kind of teams and project teams that are going to be involved in this, and probably most importantly, something that's accessible for the end client, for the asset owner post practical completion. So something that they can then use should they have any queries coming back from the regulator and they need to find information and send it back through. So as Zootech, how we are working to support confident handover is kind of focused around those areas. So centralizing all that safety critical information, so providing a single platform for data for both handover in the broader sense, but then also specifically pertaining to Gateway 3 and the BSA, which is accessible, structured, and ultimately audit ready. The software we provide allows the ability to track readiness in real time, so live dashboards that shows submission progress, completeness, shows any outstanding gaps against expected documents and information to be collated. Supports our customers in maintaining a compliant golden thread, so it is a continuous record of evidence. There's audit trails and everything that you need along those lines, and this is all to point towards a controlled and confident handover. So trying to move Gateway 3 away from being something which is at present a high risk hurdle in something which is more predictable and a managed process with clear sets of ownership. So last poll on my section. So how is Gateway 3 affecting your project timelines? So is it having no impact at all? Is it causing minor delays, so up to around 4 weeks? Moderate delays, so in the kind of 1 to 3 months areas. Significant delays, 3+ months, or does it not apply to you yet?
So most of you saying that it probably doesn't apply to you yet, probably due to the fact that we're not quite at that stage yet for submissions, which makes absolute sense. Some of you saying that you have seen significant delays in terms of 3+ months or moderate delays. No impact at all, or minor delays, no responses to that. So I think most of you at that point were not quite at the position where it is affecting timelines. But that may change. So hopefully some of the things we'll talk about will help you when you get to that point. I'm now going to hand over to Chris Wallace from Lovell. Chris, thank you again for joining today's webinar, and apologies for any technical glitches at the beginning of the session. Chris is going to talk a little bit about what they've done at Lovell, how they've worked with Zootech, and then Carolina is going to do a bit of a Q&A with Chris on some of the things that you've been seeing and hearing and developing as part of your process. So thank you, Chris.
No problem. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, I think it's probably the best to start with. We've split the Gateway 3 and Golden Thread almost into two separate items. So for us, and understanding what the Building Safety Regulator wants from a Gateway 3 is almost a rebadge of Gateway 2. So all your design, all your technical requirements, and in really explaining by building regulation how your design has complied with the building regulations. And then through that process from Gateway 2 to Gateway 3, what changes you've done, how they've been implemented, and how they've been tracked. And as you've heard, there's three changes. Well, actually, we believe there's a fourth one, because there's a lot of change that you'll do through the design while you're building that actually has not been submitted to the Building Safety Regulator, because all you're going to do is you're not going to give them every single bit of information, construction issue information there is out there. What you're going to do is give them enough information to know the building's been designed in compliance with the regulations. But what you may do as you're building, you may change some of your construction issue information that hasn't already been submitted to the regulator, which you still need to track within your change log. So we personally believe it's a fourth change that you would put into the system. But really going on to how we work with Zootech, we concentrated on Zootech, not relating to the Gateway 3 building regulations and technical compliance. We concentrated with Zootech on the Golden Thread information, and a lot of this information is required under the Building Safety Act, but not necessarily required for Gateway 3 submission. So our journey started around 2.5 years ago, when we started to review how the Building Safety Act would affect our company and what changes we would need to implement to deliver the changes being implemented by the Building Safety Regulator. For me, it was immediately apparent that we were going to be asked to produce for Gateway 3 and Golden Thread evidence that would include a large proportion of what we already do in our O&Ms and health and safety file. Hence we decided to get Zootech involved and use their expertise in helping us create a digital platform that would ensure we would not have to duplicate works or cost, and to allow us to deliver a system that could be filtered using metadata to deliver whatever evidence would be required once a Gateway 3 requirement would become clearer. So excluding all the technical and design elements of Gateway 3, our Golden Thread, we started to focus on 5 key areas: competency, compliance, change control, quality, photographic evidence. However, as we started to break each of them elements down, it was apparent each focus area had a significant amount of strands that needed further review and interrogation. For example, if you look at competency, you first need to break down by discipline, and that's just not by the trade contractors, but that's by the design team, the contracting team, and the specialist professional team. And then for each of the roles in them teams, you then need to understand what competency and evidence you need to provide to demonstrate the competency to the Building Safety Regulator if they ever ask for it. What we've done is we've produced a matrix for what we believe every role within a residential project there is, and then what the minimum qualifications, experience, training, etc. will need to work out. And that became a huge document, and to then store all the folders, store all the information to that, become a huge folder structure. And then again, that's where Zootech come in to help us. Another one of our focus area was the photographic evidence. And we've worked with a company called Okalu for over 4 years to help us record all the structural and fire compliance quality installation that we do on sites. These photographs use AI technology that uploads the photograph in real time and locates them on a plan drawing, including what level you're on. They record what element of the structure or fire compliance you're taking a picture of, so you can filter the picture by element, by area. And due to this, we now produce photographic reports for our clients, for our purchasers of their apartment, so it can be filtered down per apartment for things from the fire collar in a slab, pre-pour, post-pour, letterboxes over entrance doors where all the services come in, pre-fire stopping, post-fire stopping, the fire doors, pre-fire stopping, post-fire stopping, etc. So every element, we have a photograph. We take a photograph and it's actually uploaded onto a digital platform, which we then create a report. That then goes into the Zootech report structure that we've created with Zootech. So where Zootech has really helped us is to formalize the file structure for whether that be the compliance, the competency, quality, photographic evidence. And we've worked with Zootech probably for 18 months now. And what we've done is we've bolted on to the O&Ms and health and safety file another section called the Golden Thread Gateway 3 section. And basically how they've helped us is create a huge number of folders and created a way of being able to search very simplistically, but also be able to not have to double up a huge amount of information, whether that be as-built draw or final construction issue drawing, specifications, certification, reports by consultants, architects, etc. So really what Zootech have done is helped us create all this information that we now create and put it into a way that can be easily reviewed by the building management companies, our clients, and ultimately, if ever I come asking, the Building Safety Regulator.
Carolina, I think you might be on mute. Apologies.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Chris. That was a very, very, very detailed introduction. Thank you for that, for framing it. So you're talking about starting this journey 2 years ago. Is that when Gateway 3 and Golden Thread became a priority for Lovell?
So I think so. Soon as the Building Safety Act started to have some kind of understanding of what it meant, so we knew very early on it was going to be about you'd have to demonstrate with competency of people. You knew you were going to have to get better quality records. You knew you're going to have to get better photographic evidence. So the journey probably started 3.5 years ago, and with Zootech it probably started about 18 months ago. So what we needed to do was really understand what we were going to put into what we believed to be a golden thread set of information. And once we understood what we thought was required for the golden thread, that's when we got you guys involved, because really until we understood ourselves what we believe
we needed,
the Building Safety Act is going to require, it was very difficult to ask you to support us. So it took us probably 18 months to really get to what we believe is we're fairly confident we understand what the Building Safety Act is asking for a golden thread. And like I said, there is a difference between a Gateway 3 submission of information and a golden thread set of information, because the golden thread set of information the Building Safety Act requires as evidence of how you've built it correctly isn't going to be asked for under a Gateway 3 submission.
Yeah. And how did you bring the supply chain along when this journey started? And when I'm talking about the supply chain, I'm not only referring to trade contractors. I am also including design teams, specialists, all these people that provide a piece of information in this golden thread of data.
So yeah, it's been challenging, I would say, because as I said, we break it back down to them 4 or 5 key points regarding competency. We're asking our architects to demonstrate their competency and our supply chain. And that sounds simple, but then it's amazing the amount of people that don't really have the qualifications for the work they're carrying out. They've got the experience and probably the behaviours, because that's a new competency requirement under the Building Safety Act. But do they have the qualifications to be able to demonstrate the skill set? Experience alone is not enough. So that was something that is challenging for a number of companies. Electricians, electrical side of it, fairly straightforward. In fairness, architects, fairly straightforward. But then you drill down into a number of subcontractors, and I'll give you a good example. Is a bricklayer. A bricklayer doesn't actually just install bricks. He installs all the masonry support angles. He installs all the insulation, installs all the fire barriers in a cavity wall, and yet they are trained at best as a bricklayer and may have a city and guild with MVQing, but where's all that competency to install these fire barriers, these structural elements like masonry support? So we've been going through and trying to work out what additional qualifications and trainings these guys need and how many of them people will need it. Will it just be the supervisor who's signing off all the quality, or will it be every single person does the installation? So that's a huge amount of engagements we've been doing, and we've been actually providing the golden thread for all our projects for the last 2.5 years, and we don't have it all, but we have a good start of it, and it's showing where the gaps are in terms of the competency. And then the QA is exactly the same. We're speaking to our supply chain about the level of quality they're giving us and evidence. A lot of them are just, potentially could be tick boxes with a signature at the end. It needs a lot more than that. It needs to be their photographic evidence as well as our photographic evidence. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be commenting against drawings, the drawing numbers, the actual specification of the materials. So it can't just be, have you installed the ties to the right center, have you installed the right material? You need to be saying what materials you have installed, what drawing are you referencing when you're saying you've built it to the correct. So we've been supporting our supply chain in updating their QA records, and also speaking to architects and structural engineers and that, saying we want you to sign this building off at the end to say you're happy with it. What kind of visits do you need to have? We're not asking you to categorically say every single thing's been installed correctly, but you must have a view on whether we've performed our duty correctly to allow them to be satisfied that they believe the building probably has been constructed correctly. So there's been a lot of discussions with a lot of people.
I can see that has been a massive learning curve. What would you say, if you can say, the single biggest challenge in this process?
I think at the moment is being able to demonstrate competency of the workforce at every level to do their works. And we're talking about, any principal contractor. The principal contractor's management have got to show competency for every element of work they're signing off as well, because the subcontract signs off QA, but the principal contractor signing off the QA. So again, my managers, they've got to sign off fire barriers, they've got to sign off every bit of reinforcement. Can I demonstrate they've got competence to sign off that reinforcement? How can they really read a rebar schedule? Can they understand a drawing and actually know where every shear rail's got to go compared to what the drawing says? So I still think the biggest challenge is demonstrating competency, but not far behind is also demonstrating the quality management systems and the evidence of that quality management systems. And probably the easiest one, which I thought might be one of the hardest, is the photographic evidence, because we've got a pretty good system in place that allows us to as long as the person takes the photograph, of being able to really demonstrate the golden thread of where it is, who's installed it, when the actual work was carried out, and it allocated to a drawing in real time. So you can't take a picture and say it's linked to that position. It is actually linked to that position. It's not us doing that. It's actually the software that does it.
What about the impact that this has had in your program?
If I'm honest, our construction programs do not show any additional time for delivering the golden thread. But what it does do is we've got a time period at the end to actually then package it up. Because as I said to you, we've got a gateway 3 submission, which is basically ensuring that the gateway 2 submission is now updated to a gateway 3 set. Has anything changed? What have we changed? We've got to tell the Building Safety Regulator. We've got to again repeat how the building has been designed in compliance with every building regulation, and then we've got to provide all the commissioning certification, all that sits alongside it. So that's the new bit that bolts on. But what we are in parallel doing that, as I said, is doing all of this golden thread stuff that we're not issuing to the Building Safety Regulator, or don't intend to. But if they ask for information, we've got it ready to hand, and we can pull it out of your system. Hence the reason why we've got you involved, because you make it so easy in terms of creating them folder structures. The metadata is make it so easy to be linked to different folders at the same time without having to repeatedly keep on uploading drawings for different locations.
Have you made an application yet?
We've not done a Gateway 3 application. To be honest, the only real people that have done Gateway 3, the way I understand it, is retrofit stuff to where they've had to go in and put a minor gateway 2 to update some fire stopping or elevations in a cavity, or if it's been a new build or a new HRB, it's where the original building control went into liquidation and the Building Safety Regulator had to take it on, and that's been really tough for them guys, because they've had to produce a Gateway 3 without ever going for a Gateway 2 and without ever knowing during the build process the level of information they had to provide. So I think that's the reason why. But no, we personally have not delivered a Gateway 3.
Okay. What advice will you give to all the audience that is here with us, if they are planning to go through this journey, or if they are getting ready to?
I think, especially for HRBs, you do need someone dedicated to really understand the Building Safety Act, to understand what is required from it, and then a significant period of time to put in a process and policies and procedures, and then the training to allow it to be carried out, because this is not a simple bit of work. The challenge that I had, and I still have, is everything we've put together as an ex-person who's worked on site, worked their way through the ranks. There's no point in putting so many policies and procedures that the person's not going to be able to do it without do it and also still do their day job. So we've tried to make it very simple, add bits onto everybody's role, including the supply chain, including our consultants, etc. And then we're going to have almost what's the right word for them, auditors that work on the job, quality managers, whatever you want to call them, on the job, that's not down to actually go and get every bit of information, but ensuring it's all being collated and ensuring it's being filed correctly. So when we do finally have to issue to you guys the golden thread of information that you can then put into all the file structures, it's actually it's all there in one place. It's all there in one place that we can actually move forward with.
Thank you, Chris. Last question. Has Gateway 3 changed the way you and your team deliver projects?
If I'm honest, I think the Building Safety Act is a breath of fresh air for the industry. I think it's a real positive. Ultimately, it has been painful, and I don't think anybody would have appreciated it if they're doing a HRRB in the last 2 or 3 years of the Building Safety Act, because all it's done is significantly delayed projects. It's cost us a huge amount of more money. But if now we've got through that element, if you put just my builder's hat on, actually going to site with a much more significantly advanced design, with all the subcontractors, or majority of the subcontractors bought into it and added their CDP elements into it, going onto site with a virtually a finished set of construction issue information, with a long time to actually work out how to build it as a builder, that's been great. And I think ultimately it will help us in the long term with construction. What hasn't helped and what hasn't been done very well by the Building Safety Regulator is how we've got through the Gateway 2 process. And I really hope we get much better support for the Gateway 3, which doesn't create the same backlog as we've had on the Gateway 2.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Carolina. I'm now going to hand over to Josh. Are you there, Josh? Hopefully with the technical issues, we can hear you. I know we can't see you. He's going to do a bit of a demo for us of the platform and show a bit about what we can do to support with the Gateway 3 process.
Thanks, Maria. Sorry, I appear to be having the same sort of technical issues as James on the live storm camera, but let me see if I can share my screen very quickly. 0.26. Do you see the screen okay?
We can, Josh. Yes.
See the dashboard? Yeah. Okay, just a bit on the dashboard then before I get into the tabs. What we've done is pretty much put together a standard template which acts as a mechanism to hand over to the client to evidence both sort of fire and structure safety, as well as evidence and key building information to the handover, building information to hand over to the building regulator, sorry. So our template, has been brought together really through the wider work that we've done within the industry, from working with some of our key partners, sort of Peabody, Greystar, British Land, to name a few, who've identified information that they want capturing. If I just take you from left to right with some of the tabs that we've got included here, on the landing page, on the building overview tab, in effect, it's a summary of the information that you need to register your high-rise building for the regulator. So this includes UPRN, UPRN number for a specific block even, what the building is all about, key building information, the context of what the building is used for, and the building use details. So information relating to project specifics, number of floors, units, as well as fire escapes, escalator information. The status report is to do with more so the O&M delivery and the progress of your handover documentation. On the landing page, we've got an expected graph, a chart based on the information that we think is going to come during the construction period against what's been received. So at the start of the project, we ask for construction program, and off the back of that, using our experience, we set placeholders on the platform of who we should be expecting information from and when, which paints that amber line against what's actually been received. As we scroll down to the bottom, you can filter the information between your companies by packages, and we've got a global search function tool at the bottom as well. So if, for instance, you wanted something to do with cladding, you could type in cladding, and it will pull anything within the title under cladding using the metadata that we tag. So we use and tag metadata to every single document, in effect, to make the information searchable and easier to track. Across each of the tabs, we've got filters. Again, using that metadata, we could drill into information on a per block basis, the package, the company, and the status of the information, so where it currently sits. The next tab, the actions required tab, is effectively where we need to be focusing more of our efforts on in terms of progressing information. So we've got at the top an escalations part. So this is where we've chased the subcontractor X amount of times. We haven't got a response. We haven't got hold of them. We'd flag it, name and shame them, and list it on the platform for us to take notes. Package at draft 1 and 2 status, 30 days. This is just highlighting where information is currently sitting. Anything marked up as draft or D1 would be sat with the principal contractor. Anything marked up as draft or D2 would be someone sort of sat client side. So this is just saying information is sat in these designated places. They need reviewing, and this is more on that. This gives you typically a larger list, and then packages that haven't been or not received, and the due by is less than 30 days. The packages returned more than 5 times. In effect, this is just where we've had information from a subcontractor. We've made comments against it. Information's been missed, otherwise overlooked. We've sent it back to them, and we've repeated that process a further 4 times. Conscious that timelines are slipping, would then sort of highlight it in this section here. The All Documents tab effectively is just all the documents in the project's entirety, so all your O&Ms, all your BSA related information. We've got a separate section as well for the consolidated information, or for the building safety case. Again, using the metadata that we tag, you can filter the information on a per block basis. You can look at packages. You can look at all your fabric information. So for instance, if we were to go into fabric O&Ms, it splits the information down on a per package basis. If we take one, we could use the kitchen as an example. We highlight them. Here's all your as-built information, your O&M information, product-specific information. And if we scroll further down, you'll find information related to sort of BSA and your gateways, including your safety case report that you can easily identify. The BSA and key info tab. So this just filters and pulls information from the O&M's all document tab with everything tagged against file structure for the BSA. So I mean, extracting relevant QA records to evidence to the client is time consuming. It can be difficult to track what you have, what you haven't got. So we've defined what needs to be captured on a standardized template, tracked on a dashboard to evidence those records. So rather than scrolling through all the documents within the project, you can easily identify QA documents, photographic evidence, testing, commissioning, records drawings, which is filtered on a per block basis. Then lastly, we've got the project progress breakdown. I mean, this just identifies the completeness of all the handover information. So this could be drilled down on a per block basis to give you an overview of the status of your documentation, where it currently sits, really, as opposed to having a list of documents and not being able to identify what you have and haven't got. So this helps to understand where risks are, so you could then try to mitigate them and hopefully make more informed decisions about your project going forward. So to give you an example, what we can see here, for sub-project 1, block A, we're due to submit or due to have 2,600 documents, of which currently sat at over 2,000. That puts us at 80%. If you scroll further down, you can see where that information progresses on a per package basis, even listing out where you're up to in terms of the gateways. So we've got gateways 1, 2, and 3, 26 documents, 14 and 27 we've got here as an example, of which we haven't received anything. And then at the bottom, it gives you an overall score based on the 2 projects combined.
Thank you, Josh. So that was a quick demo of the platform, just giving some insight into how you can manage and store your documents relevant for Gateway 3. Given time, we're just going to do this poll really quickly. So what would most improve your Gateway 3 outcomes? If those of you on the call are happy to submit your answers around better planning, clearer regulatory guidance, improved design coordination, stronger document management, all of the above, or our Gateway 3 process and outcomes lives up to expectations. So if you submit your votes, again, most of you saying all of the above, a few of you saying better planning earlier in the project. I think we've heard today, obviously, how Chris started this, process 2 years ago. I think the sooner you get ahead of the project, the better, and it's all about kind of that delivery discipline throughout the stages. And then again, clear regulatory guidance is coming in as a key point, and stronger document management platform. So I'm going to hand back to you, Josh, to do a quick wrap up, and then we'll take a few questions. If you do have questions, please do put them on the Q&A board at the bottom, and we can read them out and come back with answers. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Okay, so key takeaways. Starting with the first one. If Gateway 3 is treated as a post-PC activity, the project is already at risk, right? If the information is not ready, the principal accountable person can't safely take responsibility. The BSR may withhold approval, and contractors risk being blamed for an unsafe or unoccupied building. So early preparations really aligns the construction outputs with future in-occupation safety management. The second one, centralisation of information is the foundation of compliant submission. Centralisation of information is the foundation of a compliant gateway submission, because gateway information is designed to test clarity, traceability, and accountability, none of which are possible when information is fragmented across systems, teams, and the supply chain. At its core, the Building Safety Regulator is asking one question: can you clearly demonstrate with evidence that the building is safe and compliant? That demonstration only really works if the information is centralised, controlled, and coherent. Real-time visibility of readiness prevents last-minute firefighting. Yep, real-time visibility of Gateway 3 readiness prevents last-minute firefighting because it turns Gateway 3 from a reactive end-of-project scramble into managed, continuously tested outcomes. Problems surface when there is no time, leverage, or supply chain availability to fix, missing evidence created months earlier. Unapproved or undocumented design changes, partial commissioning data, safety critical asset records never properly being closed out. A single source of truth builds confidence with both the Building Safety Regulator and asset owner because it removes uncertainty, proves control, and demonstrates that the safety critical decisions are being made from reliable, governed, and traceable information. So a single source of truth shows that information ownership is clearly defined, version control is enforced, changes are logged, assessed, and approved, and superseded information is retired and not left circulating. So this signals overall organizational maturity. And the last one, repeatable processes transform. So without a repeatable process, every project reinvents the wheel. Readiness is subjective, problems surface late, and outcomes vary. A repeatable process fixes this by standardizing every step, making readiness measurable and results predictable, and done right, compliance becomes a competitive advantage rather than a risk.
Great, thank you, Josh. I am going to open up for questions given the time. If you do have a question, please submit it via the Q&A board at the bottom right hand of the screen. I do have a few questions that are coming. Josh, given that you've just kind of wrapped up that slide and talked about the technology, where do you see technology kind of making the biggest difference in Gateway 3 right now?
technology makes the biggest difference in Gateway 3 by not storing documents better, but by replacing guesswork with real-time visibility. So with the right tech, tracks readiness continuously, it enforces a single source of truth, it controls change that happens and captures evidence that, as work progresses, so that by the time Gateway 3 is reached, the submission effectively already exists. The result is a process that is structured, regulatory ready, repeatable, turning compliance from last-minute scrambles into predicted delivery strength.
Great, thank you, Josh. And Carolina, you've been part of kind of building some of this out of our customers. Kind of everyone's talking about golden thread. In your opinion, what does good look like from your point of view? Sorry, Caroline, you're on mute again.
Sorry about that. I think there are a couple of key factors that we need to consider when it comes to what good looks like. I will say the first thing is that don't consider Gateway 3 as another deliverable of your project that you are just going to complete at the end because you are too busy constructing the building. Start from the very, very beginning. Kickoff meeting, what we do when we are required to complete golden thread of information, BSA dashboards, we talk about what we need to do, structure, where the data is going to come from, who we need to chase, and we start chasing to get this information. So it's super key to create awareness across the entire supply chain from day one. You can reflect on what Chris said. He started this journey years ago, and we got involved 18 months ago. And today, we are in a comfortable place, and I'm hoping that Chris is now ready for his application. But it takes time. Another factor to take into account is to have a single source of truth. James mentioned this. What happens a lot in construction is that you have commissioning certificates in one place, and you have fire evidence in another place, O&M documentation in another place. Have a single source of truth, single point where the regulator can come, track the information. It follows a structure, is easy to navigate, and information is easy to find. Think about someone that is going to use this information in the future and don't have any understanding of how the building was designed and constructed. They should be able to find information that they need easily. Another piece that it needs to be considered when what good looks like is very simple. It doesn't need to be only golden thread. It's for all the projects, but have clear conventions, very clean data. Data that is consistent, revisions that are logged. It's crazy, but we still see in some of our projects files that have been titled final, and then you receive another version that is final. This is going to kill your golden thread of information. Make sure that it's consistent, that it's clear, and it follows the requirements. So I will say this is kind of what good looks like.
And Gary, another one that's just coming actually, how does, and this is coming on the Q&A board, how does ZooTech relay the BSA information from your systems or from our systems?
How does the BSA?
How does ZooTech relay the BSA information from our systems? So how do we take it out and manage it?
Well, something that we have to do, we need to see this from a RIVA point of view. Mm-hmm. So what information is concept design, what is technical design, what is construction information, and in that way we kind of organize information in a structured way. We make sure that there are regular revision sessions, meetings, where we transfer the information for whatever platform or whatever our clients or designers have it to our system to make sure that we have not missed anything. We are handling documentation, we are checking, we are doing this gap analysis, but we don't own the documentation in the sense that we don't know what it contains, what has been built. So it's important that also there are discussions around what is happening, what is being discussed. Something that worked really well with Chris is that we have regular meetings. This is the documents, we are collecting the documentation. How are you getting on with processing? Let's review the quality. Let's have another session to see what this is looking. So this is a conversation. We do need to spend time reviewing what we are processing.
Great. Thank you. And maybe one for you, Chris, while we have you, obviously, our platform has kind of dashboards and that visibility of kind of readiness of documents. within that structure. I mean, how are your teams typically managing it, and do they find that kind of view useful to see, you know, that gap analysis or progress of stuff?
I think, yeah, what's really helped us is you can see visibly what's missing and who you need to concentrate on, whether that would be a supplier, whether it be a consultant, whether it be the Lovell management team, not uploading the information themselves. So I think the dashboard is a very visual tool that senior management can use. The people that are doing day-to-day providing all the information may or may not find it useful, but certainly from a senior management point of view, it allows us to track multiple projects at the same time from a high level.
Amazing, thank you. And then one final question for you, James. Given what you're seeing as well, do you expect Gateway 3 to become more streamlined over time, or remain kind of a key risk point?
Good question. Kind of both in a way. I mean, look, how does it become more streamlined? Yes, the regulator could make certain things more transparent and open, but I don't necessarily think I want to speak on behalf of them. I think I'd come back to some of the points that Chris said around, it's almost like muscle memory, right? Like the more you kind of go through this and the more you've got a process that's being followed and you go through a number of iterations of it, it becomes simpler and it becomes more streamlined. And that's dependent on having the foresight, as Chris has, to kind of develop a process that is going to be efficient, that's going to bring the relevant parties in at the right time and has the right level of oversight to ensure that information is consistent and correct. It requires the right tooling, so, you know, platforms, typically software, in order to collate all the information in that single location and provide that mechanism to pass over. And I think that really is how, you know, our customers can control how streamlined a process it is. And yeah, I'd encourage them to focus on those areas. But in reality, any kind of shake-up in the industry is always going to be, it's going to have its kind of teething issues to start with. But as it becomes the norm, then as things move on, it just becomes kind of something that is planful and goes into the overarching process.
Thank you, James. That is the final question that's come in. If you do have questions after the session, feel free to email us, either using the reply to email from the invitation for the webinar or responding to one of your accounts team. If there's questions for Chris, I'm sure, Chris, you'll be happy to take them. I can filter them through to you. And yeah, please do ask anything after the session today. I'd like to thank, first of all, sincerely, Chris, for you coming on today and sharing your insight. That was really valuable. So thank you for being part of the webinar.
No problem.
And I'd like to thank the rest of the team for your insights and being part of the session today. I would now like to close the session, and thanks again for everyone that's joined, and we will reach back out after this with a webinar follow-up. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all.